Welcome to the Hay Kings podcast, brought to you by Crone, dedicated to hay and forage producers. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Mr. Alfalfa Jeffrey Jackson. We're going to do something a little different today. On Hay Kings, on the Facebook group, Jeff asked about some farm business management stuff. And of course, that's actually what I do professionally. I don't just make my money podcasting. So we're going to flip this around today. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. Welcome to the podcast. So I struck a nerve with Mr. Jon Paul, and we're going to talk about farm management, records, financial analysis, and the like.
Yep.
And maybe not all in that same order. But John, this all came about because I was looking for a little bit of advice on where I should turn to find a platform. I'm going to say a platform to, and we're going to get into this discussion here in a second. I did not discern very clearly between what my goal was. Is it just record keeping? Is it financial analysis? Is it farm management? Yep. I think I had kind of a wish-washy question in there and probably put too many asks under one platform. I'm going to start this way and say, John, being a extension farm management specialist, I believe that's what you would consider that title, right?
Yep.
How do you get people to understand the importance of record keeping? Because I'm sure you're going to have people that are going to listen to this and go from one extreme to the other. One guy is still doing napkin math and sitting on his kitchen table once in a while. He writes some stuff down. The next guy's got it nailed to the T. But how do you get people to understand that just basic record keeping is important? And then going to a model where you're taking some records and maybe inputting some of that data and getting financial analysis to help them down the road. How do you get people to understand that transition has to happen?
Okay, so a little bit about my background here that not everybody's going to know. So my degree from Washington State University is agribusiness management and economics. This is actually exactly what I went to school for. The next step in my career was working at the Western Center for Risk Management Education. So that was crop insurance and farm bill education and outreach through the university extension system. And then I worked in the farm credit system for 6 years before starting my current role as the farm and ranch management specialist for Washington State University Extension.
Throughout some of that period, somewhere in there, you started doing your own farming and practiced what you were practicing.
Oh, I'm living
practice, preach. Yeah, all that.
I'm living all of this too. Yeah, I farm, I grow hay. That's how you get to be the Hay Kings guy, I guess.
So the best educational experience you have is messing it up yourself sometimes.
No kidding. And the things I know now that I wish I'd have known a long time ago. So to answer your first question is, how do we think about farm management and record keeping? And there's one thing that everybody has to do, and that's file taxes. I hate starting with taxes because that's not where you should be starting this thought process, but you kind of have to. So everybody does record keeping, whether it's shoeboxes or Excel spreadsheets or QuickBooks, or QuickBooks is just the big gorilla in the room, right? And then there's lots of options out there. And none of them have paid me to talk about them yet. So
that's okay.
This is an open invitation. And no matter which one of those systems you're using, you're going to start out doing it because you have to do it for the taxes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then we put together our taxes, maximizing our expenses and limiting our income so we don't have to pay taxes. And we manipulate our depreciation schedules so we don't have to pay taxes. And we do everything we possibly can to limit our tax liability, which is completely within the scope of legalness.
Right.
But it's kind of like lying to the government and then And then we try to turn around and sometimes use those records for our own management. So we have to do a couple of things differently. We can't lie to the government trying to minimize, and I use that term advisedly and lightly, humorously, right?
Right. Yes.
We can't lie to the government and then use those exact same records for our management, right?
Yes.
We just lied to the government. Why are we using that information to lie to ourselves?
And if you can't differentiate between...
yeah. Now,
then you have a big problem, I would think.
Now, there's ways to do this that are perfectly legal and appropriate. So we can absolutely get to that. But then you get to the bank, and now never, ever lie to your banker. That is the worst. If there's one thing that I want everybody to know, especially in times of financial stress, don't lie to your banker. Tell them the whole truth and nothing but the truth, right? But what you want the bank to see is great income and low expenses, which is exactly the opposite of what you're trying to. So what we have to do here is build systems that are true and accurate. And one of my wonderful mentors at Farm Credit, he always used to say, "You'll never go broke paying taxes." That means you made money.
It does. If you have to pay in, it means that you've done something very, very well.
Yeah.
Your income has far exceeded your expense levels.
And I'm here to tell you, your banker wants to see you paying taxes. So like, we just have competing priorities. And I think, I think folks try to play the games more than they try to make money sometimes. And it's a problem. So those are the competing priorities for our record keeping systems. Or our management systems. The most, do what you want with taxes. There's lots of philosophy on tax management and lots of professionals that will help you with that.
Yep.
You should not lie to your banker. But the one thing I won't let you do is lie to yourself.
That's right. And make sure your spouse is on board. That's the second one, or maybe even the first one. When you said that, I'm like, God dang it, the wife has to know what's happening.
Okay, you can't lie to yourself. You can't lie to your family. And as we think about financial records, we can think about them as communication tools within the business as well. So we have those external communications, the government and the banker, maybe the insurance agent, because some of this is asset lists, the things that you own and insure, right? And then we have these internal uses for communicating with spouses and siblings that might be involved in the farm, or communication between parents and children who are actively engaged on the farm. That's how these records should be used. So now that we've established one of the ways to think about financial records, record keeping, management records, now we have our end goal in mind, to have a communication tool.
Need your hay dried down faster without leaf loss? Krone Tedders offer the best solution by getting your crop off the field faster. Available in both trailed models and drawbar hitches with the widest range of sizes. All Krone Tedders feature flotation tires and specially engineered tines to lift the crop and distribute it evenly across the swath. Less ash and greener hay? That's the Krone way. Learn more at krone-northamerica.com.
What's the next question?
So we have to have a communication tool.
Yep.
We've decided that we needed to get out of the shoebox so we can have a communication tool, because the shoebox and or napkins, sheets of paper on the kitchen table aren't going to cut it when we need to do all that.
Yep.
Then now one of the things that I think is very important is how do you get people to understand their return on investment? I'm going to say it this way. How do you get them to understand their return on investment of their time?
Yep.
To keep good records, input the right information into the right system, and take some time to be, I'm going to say the word, a manager versus operational.
Yep.
Because I would say that if you had to pay yourself for the time that you're spending on the financial aspect, or the record keeping is how it starts.
Yeah.
How do you get people to see that return on investment? There's got to be a huge value there on how much how do you get them convinced that that's the right thing to do? Because most of the ag people that I work with or that I see are so good operationally. They're like, we'll get that tomorrow. We'll take care of it later. It'll just work itself out.
And then it never gets done. Yep.
And then we don't. So do we take the time to do it ourselves, or do we hire the right professional to help us get it? Because we absolutely will not take the time to do it. It's just not going to happen.
I mean, there's a variety of skill sets in the world, right? So if you're an agronomist, you have a very particular skill set that doesn't overlap with record keeping. If you're a diesel mechanic, you have a very particular skill set, very valuable particular skill set that doesn't overlap. It is completely okay to go into the professional world and find somebody that can help you. That's the first step. Now, we've talked about our spouses, and I'm actually right in the middle of getting my spouse more plugged in on the financial management side. It doesn't have to be complex. So I want to take you through some of the systems that I've seen folks use. Yeah. The first one that comes to mind is a small feedlot, couple hundred head capacity. It used to be a dairy, and actually, I'm going to do a podcast recording with him tomorrow night. So I'm telling a little bit, but the system he uses is a checkbook register. Mm-hmm. He still writes checks for just about everything. But with every check that goes out, it goes in his register. And he makes a note to himself that he knows exactly what that check was for. That's not the worst system. There's no digital. They might be using QuickBooks or something now, but for a very, very long time, everything is recorded. Even the cash sales go into the checkbook register, and they can balance the checkbook register against the bank account, against the bank statement. And they do that. That's the thing that I think we've lost is nobody has any clue how to balance a checkbook register anymore. Because nobody looks at their bank statements, because everybody trusts the bank statements implicitly. So let's pin that one and say they're just using paper. That's right. That's option one, and that's still a viable option. I don't know how much money they're putting through their place, but 200 head of cattle, we're not talking tens of thousands of dollars, right? We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
I would say that's very true, John, depending on the size and the complexity and the number of transactions.
Oh, and there's there's a bunch of hay acres that go along with it, but yeah.
So you can be fairly simple and get by fairly easily with some of these more paper transactions, smaller type.
Yep. And enterprise. I mean, if you think about a monthly parts bill and a monthly fuel bill, and you just get into a rhythm. The problem, of course, with paper, now the good part is they reconcile against their bank statement, right? So they're looking at their bank statements, they're looking at their transactions, they have it all. Okay. The downside with paper is it's not searchable. Let's take that paper and open up an Excel spreadsheet. I would actually advocate, if you're just starting a farm, start here. Start with an Excel spreadsheet because of the searchability, like the ease of handling data in a spreadsheet compared to paper is exceptional, right?
Yes.
But what I want to see continue is that reconciliation against the bank statement. At the end of the month, you should take your bank statement and reconcile it against all of your transactions that you now have in your Excel spreadsheet. Now, this is strictly financial data handling, right? We're not talking about production records. We're talking about financial data here. Great. Okay. So we have a very simple table in our spreadsheet that has the date, the transaction, and a plus or a minus dollar amount. Yep. And that matches to the bank statement. The reason I tell everybody to start here is you can add one more column that's your category. What was this expense or income, right?
Yes.
And this is where I want to introduce, we got to double back to taxes for just a second.
Yes.
There's nothing more important than the IRS Schedule F. As we are starting to learn this, and I actually have a copy right in front of me. If you go to any Google and type in profit or loss from farming Schedule F, you will find a document that lists out part 1, which is farm income, and part 2, that is farm expenses. This gives you all of those categories, or at least a really good starting spot for the categories. So this is things like sale of purchased livestock or other resale items. So say I buy some hay and I resell it. That's different than the hay that I produced myself, and should be tracked separately. So that's line 1A. And then line 2 is sales of livestock, produce, grains, or other products you raised. That's the hay that I produced myself. So we can start to see, let's see here, agricultural program payments, crop insurance revenue. All of those things are categories that you can use in an Excel spreadsheet to identify the source of that income and the nature of that income. And it makes it way easier to do your taxes on the back end.
Oh yeah. You take that column, run a filter on it, boom, total it, and you know exactly what that number is. And you just did it like that.
Yeah. You turn it into a pivot table and you got everything that you need.
Absolutely.
Okay. Part 7 is custom hire machine work. This is actually one of the most common mistakes I see folks make, is they just have a custom hire category that they throw both in custom hire income and custom hire expense into, and they just pile it all together. And that's absolutely the wrong way to do that. Imagine somebody that has 10 acres, and I'm just picking a really extreme example, somebody that has 10 acres of their own hay, but primarily does custom hire. So, rather, they go out and custom bale for somebody, or lots of somebodies, right? If he hires somebody to do his 10 acres because he's halfway across the state baling for somebody else, you have both, right? But the nature of the business is that he generates most of his income from custom hire. If you go down to the expense side, there's also a custom hire. As you're recording your income and expenses, treat custom hire income and custom hire expenses as two completely different things. It's one of the biggest, most common mistakes that I see. Two completely different things. You can go down to the farm expenses, and there's things like chemicals, custom hire machine work, feed, fertilizers and lime, freight and trucking, gasoline, fuel and oil, insurance, hired labor, rent or lease, that's machinery, vehicles, land, animals, seeds, plants, storage and warehousing, supplies, taxes, utilities, veterinary, breeding, medicine. They have a really good set of categories to start with.
You don't have to start blind. You've got a great format right in front of you.
These, but they're not, it's not a perfect list. And you might consider adding, in the West, we use hay tarps all the time. It is reasonable to use a hay tarp more than 1 year. So I try to track my tarp inventory and my tarping expenses. It's one of my bigger expenses. So on line 32 of the Schedule F, there's an other. It says, other, please specify. So we track tarping and tires outside of repairs and maintenance.
Yep.
So you can tweak and modify this to be your own. And if you're just doing it in Excel and you're reconciling against your bank statement and you're starting your categories with the IRS Schedule F, you're 90% the way there. And it's really important as you're starting out to touch your data, to struggle with your data, to have to interact with it. And the reality is, if you make this a habit where you just go through and you get live updates on your bank feed, right? If you do it every other day, or you do it once a week, actually works pretty good for most farming operations. That's what I would suggest.
And it's done, and it's recorded, and it's trackable.
Yep.
And you can see where you're at on almost real time versus at the end of the year when you dump the shoebox and try to put it all in one day.
And like I said, it's 90% of the fanciest system.
It is, exactly.
It doesn't have the automation that you're going to get. Now, I'll tell you that I use QuickBooks, and I'll tell you that there's things in QuickBooks that are not built for agriculture, and it's a vocabulary problem because QuickBooks is built for everybody. And there are lots of other accounting softwares. So we're moving from the spreadsheet to the accounting softwares now. The problem that you come to Excel spreadsheets is it's still relatively manual. There's typing, there's data entry errors. There isn't the automation in the reporting. And if you're hiring a bookkeeper or an accountant, they don't want to do manual data entry. They want to bring in your bank feed, compare it to your receipts, reconcile that way, and go on with life. So as you get bigger, more complex, more transactions, it is useful to go to some sort of accounting software. Now, can you make QuickBooks work for agriculture? 100%. Do you have to think in terms of, do you have to learn to think the way an accountant thinks? Yeah. Do you have to use a little different vocabulary to describe things than the way you would normally describe them on the farm? Yeah. Yep. But it's 100% possible. And most accounting companies will prefer QuickBooks because it's so universal. But if you do have something else, the process isn't any different. The automation that you get from an accounting software is downloading your bank statements and being able to automatically feeding that data into your accounting software and being able to more quickly and easily reconcile saying this receipt, because we're taking pictures of our receipts now, right?
Yeah.
We're taking pictures of our receipts, and AI is reading the text and entering it in and trying to guess the categories. But of course, they always guess the categories incorrectly. Not always. It's getting better, right? This is one of the things we're seeing with technology is technology is getting better at guessing what expenses are. Okay? And then we compare it to our bank feed and we say this bank transaction goes with this receipt. Done. Super clean, super simple. And now we have all of our financial data feeding in. We have our reconciliation process, which is what I was talking about with the spreadsheet and the bank statements. We're just doing it a little quicker and a little easier, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then we have a better communication tool because we have automated reports, balance sheets and income statements and statements of cash flow, right? Now we have our systems, whether it's paper, which is completely acceptable. We have a spreadsheet, Google Sheets. Yep. I'm kind of coming around to Google Sheets because of the drive and its accessibility on phones. But that time sitting at your computer in the evenings, also well spent. This is part of developing your management and financial handling systems. Any and all of that is okay so long as you do it with regularity and stay on top of it.
Yep. And then, so of course, if you have all that intact and for some reason a financial lender or somebody says, hey, you need to provide me a new copy of your balance sheet and income statements. And then you're like, oh, that's just fantastic. Watch this. Boop, share. Boop, boop, print. Boop. Instead of going,
yeah,
well, I don't really have all that together. It's going to be a hot minute. And then you put it off and you forget and they email you 14 times and they're like, we really need to get your records updated in here, sir.
So
ask me why I know.
Here's a pro tip.
No other square baler has a bigger appetite for the most demanding conditions than Krone HDP2 Big Pack. 8 knotters put more hay on every bale, and a new V-knotter design makes hanging on the bell hook almost impossible, requires fewer adjustments, and leaves no scraps behind. See it all at krone-na.com. Krone machines, built for generations.
If your banker asks for your balance sheet and you can send it over in minutes, that's a communication that you just made to your banker that you are capable.
Exactly.
Now, here's one of the reasons they don't always expect instant communications. All of the things that we've talked to this point only represent the cash transactions and cash balances in your bank accounts.
Yep.
I counted as I was doing my balance sheet a couple of months ago. I had 47 line items on my balance sheet, and cash was one of them. So I'm going to invite folks to think differently. If you only look at your bank account to manage your farm business, you're missing a step. You're actually missing several steps. And this goes to answering the question of, why am I always broke?
Yeah, why is my account always empty? I have all this stuff, John. How can I be broke?
Okay, so this is what a balance sheet actually captures, is all the stuff that goes along with that cash. So, again, I'm going to be not so gentle about this. If you're only managing your farm using your bank account balance, you have more to learn. So
That's very true.
Where I always start, folks, and I mean, if we're starting this conversation from ground zero and I'm consulting with you to help fix problems, I say, go take an inventory of everything. And I mean everything. Yeah. So this process, it's actually pretty reasonable to tell your banker, hey, I need to go double check my inventory. I'll get back to you in about a week. And the banker's going to go, oh, okay, that's completely fine. Now, it's more optimal if you do those things regularly. Year end.
Yes.
June 30 is a really hard time to go out and inventory stuff. And maybe not always super useful, but a mid-year check-in. And I would say the more financial stress that you're experiencing, the more frequently you need to be inventorying. Quarterly, monthly, don't get any more crazy than monthly, unless you have a really specific reason. Quarterly inventories are completely doable, because once you get through the first one, and this is what I always teach, is once you get through the first one, the subsequent updates get much easier. Because the first time you have to go track down the serial numbers for every piece of equipment that you own, that is a daunting task.
So you're building the list.
You're building
After that, it's just an update to the list.
Yeah, this is a really important concept. The list, the asset list, it changes all the time, and not just because we buy and sell tractors, but because our fuel inventory should be on the list. Because our seed in the barn should be on the list. Because our gopher bait or our twine or the hay bales in the barn should be on the list. So when do
I start talking about accruals versus cash?
Oh, yeah. Okay. But
because that fits right into some of the things that you're talking about there.
It does. It really does. Okay, accrual is the last 5%.
Okay.
And for many, it's not legally required. It's a level of complexity that is valuable, but not absolutely required. So we're going to set accruals aside for just a second.
Let's do that.
The first part of this list is easy. I say I need the make, model, and serial number and hours or miles on every single piece of equipment that you have. Every single one. Now, I don't know about all the states, but certainly in Washington State, we have personal property taxes. So we get to pay taxes to buy the piece of equipment, and then we get to pay taxes every year again, like we're renting our own stuff from the government. Ask me how I really feel about personal property taxes.
Guilty.
Yeah. So that equipment list absolutely goes towards paying your personal property taxes appropriately. It's really useful when you're communicating with your insurance agent. Now, I've had lots of conversations around insurance philosophy, and we're just going to do a little sidebar here. You don't have to insure everything. If you have a cultivator that has 2 tires and 2 hydraulic hoses, what are we worried about? If you're not moving it up and down the road, you're not worried about it getting crashed into. Yeah, but if you're up and down the road all the time, maybe a different story, right?
Right.
So maybe there's a decision to be made there. But if it's something that's on your place that never leaves your place, it has tires and hoses, and you're not in a place where wildfires are an issue, what are we talking about? And even if you're in a place where wildfires are an issue, go spray out a patch and park it there, and recognize that if it burns, it's 2 tires and 2 hydraulic hoses.
Yep.
Okay. So we're having some risk management philosophy discussions now because we have our inventory, our equipment list. We can start to go through and say, okay, we have a tractor that's financed. The bank requires us to have insurance on that piece of equipment. Check that box. Okay. We have an old piece of equipment parked out in the fence row. Still needs to be on the list, but we're not going to insure it. So we talked about personal property taxes. We talked about our insurance, our communications with our insurance agent. And now we can put that information on our balance sheet, because that's where our cash is actually going.
Yep.
It's going into all of you guys that can't stop watching the auctions. This is where your money is going.
You have it. It's just in a different form at this point in time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And as you put together these balance sheets, you can start to see the categories that you can use. Things like titled vehicles should be recorded separate from tractors, should be recorded separate. I mean, we can think about categories here that are useful and valuable for management purposes. How many pieces of titled equipment do you have? How many tractors do you have? How many implements do you have? How many self-propelled implements do you have? Those are some common categories that you can use. And then we also need to think about, I love some of the commercials I see around farm management consulting or advice. A properly structured balance sheet. Well, what the heck they make it sound like it's black magic. Do you know the commercials I'm talking about? You have to have a properly structured balance sheet. Well, there's no black magic to properly structured balance sheets. All you're talking about is short-term assets that are cash or expected to be converted to cash in the next 12 months. Intermediate assets. That's kind of a unique thought process, not just for agriculture, but not everybody uses intermediate term assets. That's that 2 to maybe 7 year timeline where we function with a lot of our equipment. And then the long-term assets, land is the biggest example of that. Cattle can fall into multiple categories. Breeding livestock is an intermediate or long-term asset. Market livestock, those steers that you're sending to the auction this fall, that's a short-term asset. So as you hear these folks advertising to you about properly structured balance sheets, that's what they're talking about. And once you understand short-term, intermediate term, and long-term assets, you understand why cash is a very, very small part of your management decision-making set.
Yep.
You start listing, okay, now I'm going to teach you the whole balance sheet here in 3 minutes. You go over to the liabilities side. You have short-term liabilities and you have long-term liabilities. You can throw that intermediate term category in there, but short-term is the current portion of your debt. Long-term is anything that you don't have to pay this year. So if you bought a 4960 John Deere, paid $40,000 for it, and your payment is $11,000. Does this sound like a real example? You have to pay $11,000 a year for it. Well, that 4960 gets listed twice in your liabilities. Once as an $11,000 payment as a short-term liability, and then the balance of that loan, whatever's left on it, goes to long-term liabilities. Now, what if you're 2 or 3 years into this and you actually own part of that tractor? There's one more section, and the reason we call it a balance sheet is we have assets and liabilities and equity. And I don't mean like the DEI kind of equity in this case. I mean that the things that you own, the portion of those assets that you own versus the portion of the assets that you owe on. Okay? So now that 4960 is on your balance sheet in 4 different places because it's an asset on the left-hand side.
Sure.
There's a short-term liability, a long-term liability, and it's listed in your equity position.
Fantastic.
But
you're absolutely right.
The value of the asset on the value of that 4960 on the balance sheet on the asset side matches. See, we got the balance sheet, and it matches the current portion of the liability, the long-term portion of the liability, and the equity and that balances. That's why it's called a balance sheet. And we ought not be managing just cash. We should be managing equity. That's our net worth. That's why we use these. That's why we use balance sheets. That's why the banker wants to see a balance sheet, not a bank statement.
Yep.
2 completely different things.
Absolutely.
So as we're going out into okay. I'm just going to pause there because I just taught you 95% of everything that you need to know if you're starting.
Yep.
Everything else around that is just getting better and faster and more detailed. And let's talk about your accrual. Your accrual statements put the expense or the income in the time period when it's actually realized.
Yes.
That's all it is.
Yep.
So, one of the tax games that we play in agriculture is prepaying expenses in December for the coming year. Right?
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you've done it.
Most likely someone has, or you all are.
Yeah, everybody plays tax games.
They try.
And it's a problem because we lie to ourselves. What can happen is we have a really good year and the tax guy says, "Hey, you owe us a bunch of money." Or rather, you're going to owe the government a bunch of money unless you go out and buy something before the end of the year. And there's rules around that, of course. But we take our delivery of our seed on the 31st of December for the subsequent year. And then the next year we have another really good year, but we can't get out of that cycle.
Yep.
Of prepaying. Now, if we're running accrual books, it doesn't matter whether we buy that seed at the first of the year or on the last day of the year, because that seed gets allocated to the appropriate crop year. The value of the seed, right? That transaction doesn't belong on December 31st. It belongs on March 10th or March 15th every year, no matter when we make the purchase.
On the accrual side, that prepay only helps you in your cash discount purchase price, not in a tax basis.
Correct. Absolutely. That's a good seed sales guy saying, no, there's still reasons to prepay.
Yeah, let's get that on the books right now.
That's a completely fair point. That there are reasons to prepay and there's incentives that companies put out there. Absolutely. Okay, I want to take this balance sheet concept and expand it just one step farther. We should be doing a balance sheet. A balance sheet is a snapshot in time. do one on December 31st. Now, the information that you need to gather is going to take you more than one day. We're talking about bank account balances. We're talking about equipment and hay inventory and all the things. And double checking all of that takes time. So we're going to start early and probably finish a little bit late, but we're still going to call it a 12/31 balance sheet because your tractor inventory is unlikely to change a lot on the last day of the year. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the reason we want to do it the same every single year is so we can compare year over year.
Yes.
Is our tractor, the total value of all of our tractors increasing or decreasing? Do we have more hay inventory on hand this year than last year?
Yes.
Is our current liabilities increasing or decreasing? Is our total liabilities increasing or decreasing? Is our equity in the business increasing or decreasing? And you noticed I didn't use the word cash once. That's actually how to use that information. It's just hard to use it when it changes so slow that we need to be looking at our businesses over a 5 or 7 or 10 year time horizon to actually know that we're making progress.
Yes. The health of your enterprise will be tracked that way.
And if we're talking about it strictly from the banker's perspective, they're going to turn it into ratios.
Yep.
And there's a few that are useful to use. You take your debt to asset. That means debt divided by assets, right?
Yes.
Debt to asset ratio is your total liabilities divided by your total assets. That's really useful to track over time, and it's a metric that banks use all the time. Not the only metric.
Right.
And then your working capital is the difference between your current assets and your current liabilities. So as we think about the seed, the fertilizer, those seed and fertilizer are current assets that you're intending to turn into cash in the next 12 months.
Roughly through crop production, yes.
Roughly, right? It's really easy to say that for grain. It's a little tougher to say that for perennial grass crops or alfalfa, right? But we take our current assets minus our current liabilities, and that gives us our working capital. That's a really useful one to use because, again, cash in the bank means absolutely nothing. There's lots of times where I have $40,000 worth of fertilizer on hand and no cash in the bank, but that's completely okay because the bill is paid.
Yes.
And in the short term, there's no difference between the two of them.
That's right. Yep.
So there's some useful metrics that will better allow you to communicate with your lender. If you start sending commentary to your lender along with your balance sheet and income statement, and we didn't talk about income statements particularly, and that's where you look at your year over year changes in your categories, the Schedule F categories, or the statement of cash flows. That's another super critical one, but cash flow just takes planning. The balance sheet is where I tell everybody to start because you start figuring out why you're always broke because you have inventories that you're not counting in your head.
That's absolutely right. And then the plan needs to be is if I need cash for something or I need to go do how do I get some of this? How do I get some of this inventory turned into cash or a different style asset?
Or am I in a position where I genuinely need financing? Yep. And then how do I access that financing? It's by being able to communicate my financial capacity well. So now, I didn't answer your question about what accounting software or what inventory software to use, because I told you that there's lots of different ways to do it.
Right.
And your volume of transactions and your size and scale sometimes necessitates more sophisticated approaches than a pen and paper or an Excel sheet. Mm-hmm. So the answer is going to be a little different for everybody. The only thing that I care about is that you're not lying to yourself.
I think and that's a big part of it. Don't lie to yourself. Make sure everything's accurate. And I think, again, it's how we started this call out. You just physically need to go through the actions and do the activity to make sure that you have everything accounted for, no matter whether it's on pen and paper, Excel spreadsheet, in your fancy system, whether you've handed it off to somebody else to take care of. It's about being accountable in the accounting world and just doing intentionally making it a part of the process.
100%. It's consistency and regularity and dedication to that process that matters.
Yeah.
For most small farms and beginning farms, an Excel spreadsheet and a little bit of consistency once a week is completely adequate.
And I think that's where even after I posed the question in the open social media format, it's amazing to me too, John, how many people had the simple reference and went, you know what? If you have someone around you and or yourself that can run a spreadsheet, whether it's Google Docs, your Apple, whatever the hell they call their thing, or Excel on Microsoft.
Yep.
The biggest note is that if you have a platform to write it down, just get it written down. And then, of course, people would say, and I'm one of those guys too, where they made a comment about their spouse or their wife or a kid or somebody in their family that's really a whiz at spreadsheets and formulas, and they have a fantastic program.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, yeah, I do too. My wife works for a bank, but she's so damn busy, she doesn't have time to do my spreadsheets. I have a financial analyst and an accounting major in my house, but
that's great.
But my business isn't big enough to trump the business she's working with today.
Right.
So it still comes back to I do have a simple spreadsheet started with inventories and expenses and transactions and good things. So I have a good start. It's just in order to, if you get to that point where you can see some expansion to get to the next level, it's about making sure that you've got the right system and process in place to handle that next growth curve. I think is what I was a little bit concerned with as well, to make it more automated.
Yeah, and that's what you're actually gaining is we're having a conversation about which platform to use. That's a question about automation and comfortability. The reality is, as I look through your post here, we have, I'm going to count, Tiller, I see FarmRaise, I see BaleTrack, I see QuickBooks, I see Ambrook, I see Xero, I see Google Sheets. That means these are successful options that farmers are already using.
Yes.
There's no secret sauce. There's no black magic. All of these platforms work just fine for somebody. The basics all come right back down to putting the information in. I just gave you the master class.
The formula is a formula is a formula. They're all running off of a formula. It's just a presentation model.
Yeah.
In my mind.
That's exactly it.
The all-new Krone Gen 5 Big Pack Large Square Baler gives you outstanding reliability and serviceability. The completely updated VFS makes serviceability easier, faster, and more economical. Talk with your local dealer to learn more about Krone machines built for generations.
And then, as you mentioned earlier, it's about the nomenclature, the terminology, how things are described. I'm guessing every industry to some degree is going to have a platform that fits their mantra a little better, where some of the people say, yep, QuickBooks is so universal. Yep. It confuses me on how to put my farm stuff in. So I want something that just feels farm-centric, that somebody that understands me put together.
Yes.
And that's where you gravitate. And somebody in sports medicine or selling soccer balls is going to want something that talks about ball pumps and needles instead of tractor tires and fuel.
Now, here's where I'm most excited. In the world of AI coding,
Yeah.
In the last year, everything just blew up and everybody turned into a coder. It is so easy to build a system now. It's the craziest thing. So we're getting new stuff thrown at us all the time.
Yes.
So there's going to be more options than ever. But there's no app that goes out and looks at serial numbers for you.
10-4.
There's no app that counts bales. This is actually one of my biggest sorry, we're going to go on another sidebar here for just a second. This is one of my biggest critiques of the hay industry.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to track inventory. If you go to a grocery store, everything in that store has a barcode. If you go to a hardware store, everything in that hardware store, except maybe the nuts and bolts, has, right? Has a barcode. We're kind of the nuts and bolts of the hardware industry, right? Everybody just throws it in bulk. And I've had conversations. There are companies that are working on data handling systems for hay farmers to have better inventory. And it is absolutely where we have to go to professionalize our industry to make our accounting easier.
Yes.
And I've had these conversations with the companies that are doing it, and they just tell me that nobody buys it, that the systems already exist.
Absolutely. Been involved in some of those conversations while you were there, John. And I heard the same thing. That was the interesting thing. So let's go down that road.
Yeah.
The growers in the room said, we need this. By gosh. So guys, sorry if I'm going to pick on y'all a little bit, but this is how this goes.
Oh, yeah.
We could be successful if we had a software that could do this, this, or this, or a monitor that could do this, this, and this. And the equipment manufacturers sit over there and go,
we built that 10 years ago.
Yep. So that's old technology. And we introduced it. And none of you wanted to pay us for the work that we did for what the value was worth.
Yep.
And so then we had to back table it, shelf it. It's sitting back there because we didn't have enough market to bring it forward. So it's kind of this chicken and the egg thing. And yes, if you perceive that you need it and there's a value, then we have to be willing to help people provide it. You have to be willing to help those people provide it to you.
Yep.
I think is the message. Everything comes at a cost. It's just the way the world works, and there's no way around it. But yes, to your point, there is a lot of technology out there that we have put back on the shelf because the adoption rate was so small. And then you get mad at somebody else that's 10 steps ahead of you because they're using the technology that they paid for. You're all making choices.
Although I'm a little worried that technology isn't actively on the market because 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it was a flop.
Right.
And I think now we're getting to a point where there's consolidation in the industry where we have to be excellent managers or it's going to get tougher and tougher and tougher.
I agree with that statement 100%. We need to dig that back out, update it with some new files, get the interfaces all matched up again so we can utilize it, John, because I would tell you that's the more I think about the hay industry in general, I'm one of these guys that still runs a little small square baler. And I'll tell you what, the first time I saw a double baler advertised, I was like, ooh, Grady, that's a pretty cool idea.
Uh-huh.
But nobody's ever going to be able to afford a double baler. Well, guess what?
They're coming.
Holy smokes for interest and people today that already own a double baler, whether it's 2-string or 3-string. And I did not see that coming quite that hard and quickly. But to your point, as things get consolidated, integrated, volume, speed, and efficiency has to go up to stay competitive. Labor, mechanization, all these words that you throw in there together, it's growing fast.
And it's not reasonable to rely on labor to do your data handling for you. The whole reason stores have barcodes is so employees don't have to type in bale counts.
It's just done. Boom.
I mean, I just mix those two things up on purpose, right?
Yes.
The employees at a grocery store aren't counting apples. They're scanning apples.
Absolutely. And it's doing multiple processes at one time. It's keeping inventory, putting the price on the receipt, giving you your transaction, all of it's done at the same time.
Yep, absolutely.
One swipe. Yep.
Now, of course, there's more things to manage. Maintenance records. We've talked a lot about inventories because hay inventory is exceptionally difficult. One of the things we're not tracking in our hay inventories is losses. There are hay businesses that do. Our exporters, they have a really, really good system where they're scaling everything that comes in and scaling everything that goes out. You betcha they know exactly what their losses are, what their shrink is.
I'm glad you said that, because as soon as you said inventory tracking, I had a flash in the back of my brain that was 3 broken bales at the edge of my pile. And I was thinking the word shrink, and you went right down that road. That, yes, inventory in is a whole different story then. And then you need to know a little bit about what happened to that inventory. Mm-hmm. How do I correct that inventory loss? How do I track it? How do I recover it? Can I ever recover it? So to your point, the exporters, knowing a couple of those people as well, that, I mean, there's a shrink process there, but they're trying to recover the shrink.
Yeah, they're rebaling it, putting it as sleeves and
rebaling the chaff and using everything but the whiskers on the broom in there to get back all that shrink they can.
Yep. And then some more things, bottom bales. The whole industry has problems with bottom bales. There's moisture in every piece of dirt on earth that wicks up into whatever hay you stack on it. No matter how good of a job you do. Now, there's ways to be better at it, but you always have bottom bales.
Yes.
And one of the ways that I deal with shrink in my business is I'm stacking 9 high in squeeze blocks, West Coast thing. But that means 1 out of every 9 of my bales is sitting on the ground, is in direct contact with the ground. That's 11% of my hay. What if, now, the value of bottom bales is not 0, but maybe it's half. So now I just found 5.5% shrink in my business right from the start.
Yep.
So how do you minimize that? I can find 5.5% by not storing hay any longer than I absolutely have to. So in my farm business, the hay that I produce, I try to sell as fast as humanly possible, because if I let it sit, it snows where I live, and the snow can be 3 foot up the side of the haystacks, and you get to March, and 11% of your hay is actually worth nothing, and actually costs you to go out there with a loader bucket and scrape it off the ground.
So I was going to go down that road, because your shrink can go from 5% loss to significantly more the longer you store it. And that's in any environment. I run through the same thing. I had a whole stack that got a hole in the center of the tarp, and it made like a swimming pool on top.
And tarps are not waterproof. They shed water.
They shed.
Tarps shed water. They are not waterproof. And you ended up with a stripe through every bale from the top to the bottom, and then it's spread out from the center.
I would guess by the time it was done, John, it was close to 35 or 40%, not just 6.
Yeah. Yep.
That's and then it's damage control after that, and what can I salvage versus what's compost.
Yep. Interestingly, I actually have not made money, but minimized losses where I've had some of those train wrecks, taking it and actually doing a proper composting process and selling compost.
Correct. No, you wouldn't believe how many acreage people like compost for gardens and yards and reclamation projects.
Yep.
So there's recovery, but it's not that great.
No, that is not the money maker. It's a loss minimization and a way to keep things neat and tidy, and that's about managing shrink.
But I would say thank you for the quick tutorial lesson on some accounting principles, some record keeping, some management tools that we can go down. And again, for me, it just reemphasized the fact that the tool I have is not broken. I just need to probably do a little better with the tool that I have. It'll be fine for quite some time.
It's more regularity and dedication to the tool that you already have.
And there is again, and you could do a whole nother segment on the difference between record keeping, which is partly what we really focused on this morning, versus financial analysis and financial management based off of some of the records that you kept.
Well, do you have any final closing remarks, Jeff?
John, I think that was great. And I think even for the people that have fancy spreadsheets and fancy systems that they're working with, just a reminder, a little brush up. I mean, it seems to be that way in my life. I don't study everything every day, so when I can get a reminder or a brush up on the basics, just helps everything else flow so much better. So thanks for the time to interview you on your own podcast today. I really appreciated the time. It was fun.
Well, I know we did a little backwards today, but this is something important to everybody in agriculture, and certainly hope it helps. And if anybody has any questions, contact information at hey-king.com. I'm happy to help.
Well, great. That wraps up our segment of Hey Kings podcast today, sponsored by Krone.
With that, thank you to Krone for sponsoring the podcast, and Nick and Paul Mary Sound for doing all of our editing. I look forward to having Mr. Jackson back again many more times.
Thanks, John. Have a good day, y'all.